Greetings and welcome to Flavourful Eats. I am your host, Hamsha Naidu. Today joining me is Lindy Scott. Welcome. We have a very interesting topic today, talking about lactation and nursing mothers more than anything else. But these cookies can be eaten by everybody. It's very healthy and wholesome. So with that, we have two different cookies. Lindy has a nursing experience for over 30 years with family and children. So we'll leave it to Lindy to give us more detail.
Thank you. So yes, along with being a nurse, you know, my career evolved into being a lactation consultant and wanting to provide a more positive experience for my moms and help them to do better with their breastfeeding and to have adequate nutrition. Lactation cookies is just one of the things that I encourage, and I actually make them for myself just because they're healthy. It's a really good grab on the way out the door breakfast for me, because I'm not a breakfast eater. So anyway, so we have the cookies here. We're going to go through them and then we'll talk a little bit more about the benefits of them
as we're going
through. Yeah. So what I have here is 1 cup of applesauce pre-mixed with 1.5 cups of steel cut oats. The steel cut oats tend to be nutty and gritty, so pre-soaking them in the applesauce, and it can be for, you know, a couple of hours if you need to, just helps soften them up a little bit. Overnight will be good too. You could do that. The flaxseed meal, we have 3 tablespoons of flaxseed meal mixed with 6 tablespoons of water. And this has been sitting probably about 45 minutes, and you can see it's really kind of thickened up. And the flaxseed will soak up that water. We have 2 sticks of butter. I have one in the pan already. We have 1 cup of brown sugar, a teaspoon of vanilla, 4 tablespoons of brewer's yeast. Now the brewer's yeast is essential. This is really good. It is high in iron, protein, and vitamin B. So of all the products, this is the one that actually helps with the lactation together with the oats. This and the oats are and the flaxseed are all the critical ingredients. And the brewer's yeast you're going to find probably at a health food store. You're unlikely to find it in a regular supermarket, and most of them are labeled as an unbitter brewer's yeast. It does have a very distinctive taste, and if you're a beer drinker, you're probably used to it. But in the cookie, you'll get used to it. We have 1/2 cup of wheat germ and 1/2 cup of wheat bran, 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour, a teaspoon of baking soda, and 1 cup of old-fashioned oats. Now you want the old-fashioned and not the quick cook ones, because the more you process them, the more nutrients you leave. And then just remembering that our oats are really good, you know, nutritionally. They're 66% carbohydrates, 17% protein. And generally, if I'm eating my porridge, I'm not thinking of the protein in them, but they are really good, as well as being a good source of fiber. And you have molasses, the last ingredient is molasses. And I do have molasses here. I kind of put these, and these were a late addition just to help mask the flavor of the brewer's yeast a little bit. And now that's your basic cookie. From there, you can add anything you choose to the base recipe. Today, we've chosen white chocolate chips. You could use cranberries. You could use nuts. You could use regular chocolate chips. You could do anything you like to sweeten it up and make it a nice, tasty cookie. Okay, so we're going to cream the butter and the sugar first.
The one that's fall over.
I'm just going to add that brown sugar in.
So instead of brown sugar, one could use coconut sugar too. It may be a little more health value than the brown sugar.
You certainly could, and I encourage you to be adventurous. Don't be afraid to try different things out, to try different ingredients. You can substitute out, with the exception of the brewer's yeast and the oats, if you needed to substitute out the wheat bran, I'm not quite sure what you would substitute those with, but if you're wanting gluten-free, you would remove the wheat germ, the wheat bran, and use an alternative flour. I use the applesauce instead of eggs. If you wanted to put eggs in instead of the applesauce, you could do 2 eggs. Yeah, so it was interesting. When I had my second son, my husband's grandmother told me to have a bowl of porridge before bed for my milk production. And I had grown up eating porridge for breakfast, and my mother's philosophy had been, you know, a good bowl of porridge will keep you going for the day. And then, so having a bowl before bed kind of made sense. I'm like, it's a good complex carb. It sustains through the night. Of course, it's going to help with breastfeeding. So I was doing that. And then as my career progressed and I was working in a more culturally diverse environment, so I'm adding here the steel cut oats and the flaxseed. That's our 2 wet ingredients. So we'll stir them in. As I started working with different cultures, I discovered that every culture has their own version of porridge. Depending on their geographical region and availability of grains, the grains all differ, but that's all a grain or a whole cereal that they use. So it could be millet, maize, sorghum. You know, every culture has their own version of porridge. So I thought that was absolutely fascinating, that without lactation consultants and without without education, we have survived and have our own traditions.
That was the vanilla essence.
Okay, so that was the vanilla essence that I added, and then I'm just going to start adding all the others. I'm going to start this slowly so we don't
powder the studio.
Yeah, so we don't have a flour bomb. So I've got the flour, the 1.5 cups of flour.
So like we said, the brewer's yeast is one of them that it's one ingredient that many people don't know about that can actually help with actual lactation.
The brewer's yeast it's a bizarre little ingredient. It's not something that people use a lot, but you can certainly add it to other recipes too if you're wanting to boost. It is high in iron, protein and vitamin B. So even without, whoa, and that fluffs more than the flour. Even without the need for increased milk production, that brewer's yeast is going to give you a boost of energy because of the vitamin B in it.
Right.
So we're just going to slowly add these.
And for vegan vegetarians, B12 is important. It's one of the things that's covered in this brewer's yeast. And if you cannot find altogether brewer's yeast, nutritional yeast is easier to find. You could use it. But the better thing to do is brewer's yeast. Number 1 choice is brewer's yeast.
Okay, this is getting pretty thick here.
That's what you want to, right? You're spooning
it is going to be pretty thick.
That's the molasses.
This is the molasses going in.
Again,
once again, not essential, but it'll add a little bit of color, it'll add a little bit of taste.
And if you want to date sugar, you can too. There's iron and stuff in that date sugar. Date syrup.
You know, and I do a lot of experimenting with my cooking. My recipes very rarely are exactly the same. Some days I'll throw in some coconut. I'll throw in nuts. It just depends on what mood I'm in, what I have in the fridge, what I have available.
It's always important to cook with what's in your, what you have available.
Right.
They say with
and
baking...
this is the decadence. Adding those nuts is the decadence of the recipe. And as I say, you can do this cranberries or raisins.
In this case, it's white chocolate chips.
White chocolate chips, yes. We're looking pretty good there. Let's
that is the actual dough
and
done.
Just stir it down a little bit. Whoa. Make sure our sides are all scraped down. And we'll give it another little mix.
So this is a quick one where you don't even have to refrigerate or anything, you can just use it. But in case you think you got too much of batter, you can refrigerate, right? Freeze it.
You know what, I have never tried refrigerating it, but these cookies I have frozen the little balls. I'll put them into the little individual balls, freeze them, and then you can always pull out, you know, half a dozen or so, which means you've got fresher cookies. You're not going to eat, this does make a lot of cookies, you're not going to eat a lot of cookies in one sitting.
Right.
They are high in fiber. You may regret eating more than you need.
Yeah, just make sure you have enough liquid with it.
Well, yeah, not even that. There's, you know, if you have problems with constipation, this is the solution.
So this is
However,
another thing.
You do not want to overdo the amount of, as good as they might be, you don't want to be eating too many in one day.
Sometimes postpartum, you have, some people do have a little bit of constipation.
Exactly.
So this is one of the good things too.
It is definitely good for that. Okay, so there's our cookie mix.
And you bake them at a moderate oven of 350,
so 350
for about 20 minutes?
For about 12 minutes.
12 minutes, oh, okay. Oh, you're using a small... and
I've got my little
small
scoop
ice
there.
cream scoop. Okay.
So we're just going to scoop them out into...
So make sure that they're quite far away.
Just They really don't spread too much, but like a couple of inches apart.
Right.
I probably could put them a little bit closer, but you know, I think you become creature of habit and you just always
everything
space them out even if they
yeah.
don't need to be.
Right.
So as you can see, we've got all our cookies all rolled out. They're just in bowls. You do not need to flatten them or anything. And we have got approximately 5 dozen cookies here. So it really is a recipe that will go a long way. And you really want to look at either freezing the little bowls. You can just freeze them like this and put them in a freezer bag and pull them out individually, or cooking them all and then pulling your cookies out individually in smaller batches.
That's true. They can cook them all and take them.
Yes. So we're just going to put them in the oven. They're going to go into 350 degrees. For about 12 minutes. We only have 2 bags. 12 minutes.
So with that, then we got our second cookie, which is already more or less set up. So
I'm just going to grab my little recipe
Lindy
here.
is going to be showing us exactly what she's doing. This is more like a bar.
This is really a more decadent kind of a sweet. It has a lot of sugar, but if you're wanting that little sweet kick, it's an old New Zealand recipe. It's the New Zealand version of Rice Krispie treats. No marshmallows. And I have once again adapted it to make it healthier by adding other ingredients. So what we have is, I have a stick of butter, a half a cup of white sugar, 3 tablespoons of honey, and this is a little bit, it's just liquid honey that got a little bit crystallized in my cold kitchen cabinet. So you're just going to put those in and get them on to warm.
Okay, so even this, you can add other ingredients like you said.
Certainly can, you know, if you want to try substituting out. This I use as a base for a couple of different things. Now we are going to add Rice Krispies, cashews and coconut. But then I also experimented yesterday and made, if you want to show me those ones, I just used another commercially prepared cereal that is one of my favorites and mixed that with this and added some extra cranberries. And this is a softer, chewier treat than these ones typically turn out.
And this is it's got some almonds and
this particular cereal has a blend of wheat, coconut, almonds, cranberries, and then I just added extra cranberries.
Right. So okay. So anybody could add any dry.
You certainly can, you know, just try different stuff. Now this is one of these recipes too. So because it's a sugar, butter, honey base, we're going to get it all melted first. But it's one of these recipes, it's kind of like making toffee. The longer you boil it, the crispier it turns out.
Okay.
So day by day, the recipes can be very different. And I did a batch of the cashew one the other day. It is crispy. It is very, very crispy.
So you left it for a long time on the stove.
Well, I thought it was the same amount of time, but it's crispy. This one's soft. They both taste good, but don't feel like you've made a mistake.
Also, I guess it's just your sugar, how it crystallized, how the heat of your stove, because when you, it's basically making a syrup right there.
It's making a syrup, and if you think of making toffee, the longer you make your toffee, you look at your soft ball, your hard ball.
Yes.
You know, the longer you boil it. I think the one I did the other day maybe was boiling a little bit harder than this one. This was more of a simmer boil. So as soon as we've got this all melted and bring it to a boil, then it will just sit there and boil for about 5 minutes. So I'm just turning this down to a medium heat. We want it simmering but not boiling too much. Just remember it's a high sugar content, so if it boils too much, you're going to actually caramelize your sugar. And you may end up with a darker looking bar. So one of the things that I think is really important as a new mom a new nursing, whether you're nursing or not, just being a new mom, life is pretty crazy. And I think one of the biggest things is learning to take care of yourself. So I encourage you, would you like to get the other one out of the fridge maybe?
It's just not new mums. It's about
not just new moms,
journey.
but I think
whether you're leaving home to college.
Right, but I think with new moms in particular, I think one of the, you know, because we're focused on lactation cookies, one of the things that is hardest is all of a sudden the focus is all on the baby. And one of the things that I really try and teach my new moms is don't be afraid to take care of yourself. You have to learn to take care of yourself. And that means eating well. And you can do your lactation cookies, you can have good food, but it's eating regularly and taking care of yourself through the day that is really important. So what I encourage you to do is every day sit and spend a little bit of time, or stand, because you're not exactly sitting in the kitchen, but prepare some snacks for the day. Do it the night before. Do several for a week. You know, so some of my suggestions are, you know, if you've got stuff that you've prepared in the morning, then you can grab, you can run, you can sit down, you can nurse your baby, and you can snack. So having healthy snacks is huge. Hummus is a great source of protein. You can do pretzels, you can do vegetables, you can do fruit, you know, whatever your preference is, whole grain crackers. Chop up some little cups of fruit, have it chopped and ready to go, because that's the big issue. You're busy running around after baby. Baby's crying again, it's time to eat again, and you haven't eaten yourself. You fed the baby, you showered, you put the dishes on, and baby's hungry again, and it's time to eat again, and you don't have anything. If you don't have something that you can grab and go sit down, you're going to go without meals, and you know, you really got to be taking care of yourself. So this is just some suggestions that I have for easy to go. You know, these snacks are wonderful. Nuts are always good, a good source of protein, doesn't take many. Cheese, if you're a cheese eater, I love cheese. I actually have to limit my amount of cheese, but cheese and any kind of dried fruit or nuts is always a hit for me. And these, you could do several containers. You can do enough for a week and just leave them in the fridge. So all you've got to do is grab, sit down with the baby, get baby feeding, and you've got a snack that you can eat. Fruit, obviously. The other one is, I love my mason jars. Making a smoothie, doing a protein shake, it takes time if you're doing them one at a time. This, you can grab this out of the fridge, ready to go. You can grab your individual serving of protein shake powder. You can sit, put the baby on the lap, put the baby in front of you, mix it together, shake it with one hand while you're talking with baby, have it ready, start nursing baby, and you've got your drink. And it's a great, ready to go kind of a food. So be thinking of yourself, spend a little bit of time every evening, every morning, preparing things. Certainly you could make sandwiches ahead of time and leave them in the refrigerator. But just
always take care of yourself, and if
yes.
you've taken good care of yourself, then you'll be able to take care of just about anybody and anything that comes by you with poise and grace.
It's one of the things, you know, I tell my new moms, if I could do it over, nobody ever taught me to take care of me. And I think that's one of the hardest things to learn as a new mom.
I think ladies in general don't think of taking care of themselves.
Precisely.
You learn that from your mother, right?
Right.
We project all that we learn and what we come, you know, from being brought up together. So if you take good care of yourself, then you know your child is going to take care of themselves when they're grown. And then talking about your lactation, you were talking about, you know, your grandmother-in-law had given you some hints and tips.
Yes, you know, her big one, of course, was the oatmeal. And it was interesting because you know, I didn't give my mother enough credit for how smart she was. She raised us with a bowl of porridge every morning before breakfast because it was a good, solid food to have a school day. We never got processed cereal except for on Sundays. That was our Sunday treat. We had oatmeal every other day of the week because we needed it in our bellies. I think that's my Scots ancestry showing through. Just watching the time. So we are at 5 minutes now. Is that off? Off. So we are just going to mix everything all in together here.
It's off, so it's not going to get hot. You can leave it there. I promise you.
I just want to move this over. And we're going to tip. And at this point, you want to work fairly quickly because it's a toffee-ish kind of a base. If you sit for too long in the pan, it'll start to set. It does smell good, though.
Yes, it does.
I love the smell of this.
It definitely does.
So we're just going to mix it all up.
So again, we got a grain here, which will be good.
Right, and
if you add here, you added dried fruit.
And you know what? I've also used it with whole wheat Cheerios, and that turned out fairly well if you're wanting to add some extra fibre. So there we go, and this actually is a fairly moist mixture. So if I was at home, I would probably get something else and throw it in there just because it's a good moist mixture and there's enough honey to stick more stuff in. That's just me.
Right,
I'm like, how much nutrition can I pack into this amount of honey and butter? So, but this is perfectly good to go. So we're just gonna tip it all out. And it is
These
hot.
are like Rice Krispie crackers.
And it is hot, but this is my trick. If you
wet your hand and touch it, right?
Wet your hands, you can pat it out really quickly. So just press it into all the corners. And as I say, it's always a mystery. Is it going to be a chewy one or is it going to be a super crispy one? In New Zealand, we would always blame the weather. We had several recipes that were weather dependent because the weather could change so quickly.
Right.
But really, it's probably more scientifically based than the weather. There we go. So we just leave that to set, and you can set it when it's you can cut it when it's a little bit cooler, or if you leave it until it's totally set, when you go to cut it, sometimes it'll just crack into irregular shaped pieces, and it really doesn't matter either way. But there's your Rice Krispie or your cashew and coconut crispy treat, all cooked, fast, easy, and wicked tasty.
So now we have this out of the oven.
Now they're out of the oven. These look great. They're just lightly browned around the edges. Clearly, if you wanted them a little bit crispier, you could brown them a little bit more. The last batch that I did at home, I left too many out without putting them in the freezer. And they did, because they were more of a cakey cookie, they did get just a little bit stale. They were still edible, they still tasted good, but they just weren't nice and fresh.
Right.
So I did throw them in the toaster oven just for a few minutes.
Okay.
And that totally crisped them up and gave me a really light, dry, crunchy, crispy cookie. So, you know, they're really pretty versatile when you start looking at all those.
Okay. So we pretend that we got our smoothie done here.
So you got your smoothie done there. You're going to shake it up?
Okay.
I'll
leave you to do that.
So this is just, I mean, there's a variety of smoothie shake powders, protein powders out there. Some of the weight loss powders, don't discount them. They're sold as a weight loss as a primary nutrition. If you're using them as a supplemental nutrition, they actually have a lot of really good stuff in them.
This looks like a strawberry variety.
This is a strawberry variety. And that's what's so great about the little mason jars. You can have your milk ready, and then you're just ready to go. You're ready to just shake and go. This is still fairly soft.
You're generous.
Oh yeah, well, I'll cut them smaller the other way, but if you're going to have a piece, you may as well have a piece.
That's true.
Because if they're too small, then you're just going to come back for seconds or thirds, right? There we go.
On the other hand, in this size, you can still have second and third. So
exactly. And I am not a perfectionist, and they are not all the same size, so you can take whichever size piece you would like. So there we go. We have lactation cookies, and they're still fairly soft. So as you can see, I'm going to break this one in half. Look at this, just to show you the texture. Now this is still pretty hot, but you can see it's a really nice, soft texture. And
it's cooked. But once it gets hard, it's a little bit like brownie.
A little bit like a brownie.
Yes,
yeah, that kind of a texture. So.
Yeah, so
there we go. So we'll put some of those there. I don't know if we're going to get any out of there. Let's have a look. Just because it is still fairly soft.
Not bad.
This is, yeah, it's still soft. It needs to cool a little bit more, and it will crisp up more as it cools.
So this looks like a really yummy treat. So whether you're lactating or not, these are all healthy snack options that we all can enjoy at any time.
And can I say, you know, one of my biggest moments of pride was seeing my daughter say, "Mom, can I take some of your cookies to work?" And I'm like, "Sure, Caitlin." And so with great pride, she took them and said, "Guess what, everybody? I've got cookies to share. They're lactation cookies, and she promptly served them, and they promptly all got eaten by the staff at the mountain who were teaching snowboarding and skiing. So all those young guys were quite happy to participate, and she came home and said, Mum, they were all gone. So
and they're good energy treats for sure.
They truly are, and that's why she wanted to take them, because you know, she knew the value, the nutritional value.
So we did not talk much about lactation, but we did get a lot going through with this.
You know, I think the biggest thing with lactation is it is hard work. Work with your healthcare professional. Know that there's lactation consultants out there. You know, for new moms who are just starting out, I think the number one thing is knowing that the first couple of weeks, I think, are the most brutal. If you can make it through that, you're on your way. But you do need help. I think most of the moms that I see are a little bit disappointed that it takes a little bit more work, that it doesn't just always happen. Work with your lactation consultants. Go seek a lactation consultant if you don't have one already. Even after you go home, go home from the hospital, they're out in the community. They're available as a good resource. But one of the biggest things is just learning to take care of yourself. Don't stress it. It's not rocket science. Babies aren't rocket science. Every baby is different. Every mom is different. Every experience is different.
And don't be too independent. If the help is offered, accept it graciously.
Yes. And I think that's one of the hardest things, is you don't know what you don't know until somebody tells you you don't know it.
And our forefathers and, you know, people before us have already done this, and they're coming with wisdom. So don't discount it.
Right.
And you know, we all want to question and re-question.
And I think, you know, and I think too, you know, going back to the cultural thing, it's always, when I look at the intergenerational cultural differences, and we look at our children being brought up in a culture that is different from our own, and, you know, those new moms who are trying to integrate what their mothers and grandmothers believe with our very American culture that they are now raising their child, and that can be difficult, but it can be done. It can be done, and I think, you know, being open to the old ways and the new ways combined is...
And be true to yourself. That's the most important thing. At the end of the day, be true to yourself. You know your health.
Yes.
And you take care. Thank you so much for joining me, Lindy.
Thank you for having me.
And all the best in your future.
Thank you.
Wherever it takes you. And till we meet again.
Yes.
I'm sure hopefully we can do something else together.
Maybe.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindy. From your host, Hamsha Naidu. Bye. Until we meet again. Take care.